Good afternoon and a happy Sunday to you all. For those of us who are celebrating the day of the Lord, greetings, Thokozani, Kamagwini, to all my fellow healers, priests, priestesses, star seeds, gifted children, all beautiful children of God. Today we're going to be talking about narcissism, body jumping demons and principalities that inspire narcissism, and just some of my experiences dealing with narcissists. And what has inspired me to record this video is I posted yesterday just around the body jumping principality. Actually, I think it was this morning that I posted that. But really, it's just occurred to me that I have been experiencing the same behavior from different people over the years. And I recently watched another very enlightening YouTube video. I forget the name of the guy who posted, but when I do find it, I will put it in a link in the comments, just so that you can follow him. He also has some very interesting insights as an empath around the narcissistic behavior that he's also experienced. But he brought to my attention that a demon or a principality can jump bodies and go from one person to the other. So you continuously experience the same behavior despite all the shadow work you've done, despite all the healing work you've done, and your efforts to maintain a high vibration, but you still continue to experience the same behavior. So it really opened my eyes as to why. But just to give a little bit of background, if you've ever experienced behavior of a malignant narcissist, this is what it's like. And these are some of the characteristics of a malignant narcissist. And it's just to be clear, it can be very challenging because narcissists often hide their true nature behind a charming facade. They're often the most apparently nicest and most charming of people, but very evil, very insidious, very cunning, very conniving. So some of the signs to watch out for include manipulative behavior. And this really is where malignant narcissists manipulate people to achieve their goals. And they employ different tactics. They may employ deceit, so deliberately lying to you, either by commission or omission, not telling you certain things you need to know. They may guilt trip you, so make you feel guilty. And they may gaslight you, so convince you that, no, you didn't really see that. That didn't really happen. Making you question your version of events. That's what gaslighting is. They lack empathy, so they have very limited capacity for empathy, and they often disregard the feelings and needs of other people. That's probably one of the biggest signs of a narcissist. If anything else, they don't care about your feelings or those of other people. They can be callous or indifferent to other people's suffering. Another characteristic is grandiosity. Malignant narcissists often have an inflated sense of self-importance and superiority. They may exaggerate their accomplishments and demand constant admiration. So part of the grandiosity is they overestimate their capability. They think they're better than they really are. And it's disconcerting when you work with them because they give the apparent impression of competence. But when you really examine what they say and what they do and their results, you realize that they're really not that good. But they're very good at appearing competent. And they're very good at convincing particularly superiors that they're competent. And they do that by taking credit for other people's work. And they also do that by shifting blame when things go wrong. So when things go wrong, nothing is ever their fault. It's always someone else's fault, usually a subordinate or a colleague. And what they do is they kiss up. So they are very nice, very polite, very respectful to superiors, and they kick down. They often employ bullying behaviors. They're disrespectful and they're abusive to their colleagues, and they are their co-workers as well as their subordinates. So they often play up to people whom they feel have power. The moment you are perceived to have no power, a narcissist will walk all over you. They will bully you. They will be rude and disrespectful. And if they can get away with it, they will shift the blame to you when things go wrong. So they never take accountability for anything. They obviously never ever say that they're sorry. If they do, they'll say, I'm sorry you feel that way. They never actually take accountability and apologize for the thing that they've actually done. They never admit to doing anything wrong. And that's part of the grandiosity. They can do no wrong. The other thing that they have is exploitative tendencies. So they exploit others for personal gain, whether it's in personal relationships or the workplace. They take advantage of people's vulnerabilities. So if you're a people pleaser, and a lot of us empaths have been through that phase before we've done our shadow work and understood our worth. If you're a people pleaser, if you want to be nice to people, if you want to be good to people, narcissists will seek you out, draw you close, and they will make use of you for personal gain. They will do anything to make you trust them, and once you trust them, they will ask you to do the strangest or most horrible things to other people. And they will take advantage of your relationship, whether you're a spouse, you're a co-worker, a colleague, a child, or even a parent. They will make use of you. So they'll exploit for their own personal gain. And they'll take advantage of your vulnerabilities. Usually as an empath, you have a need to be liked. You may have a rejection wound. You may have trauma around, being abandoned. So maybe you've got abandonment trauma or a rejection wound. And narcissists are very good at knowing someone, digging for information, pretending to be caring so that you share your personal story. Then once they know about your vulnerabilities and your weaknesses, they use them against you. And they will use your fear of abandonment to keep you doing all those bad things that they use you to do to other people. And they also have a need for power and control. So malignant narcissists crave power and they crave control, because remember, they're empty. They don't have the capacity for empathy. So when you lack the capacity for empathy, it's very difficult for you to feel genuine joy or pleasure. And they substitute that with power and control. So they feel good when they're able to control people, when they're able to make people do what they want when they want it, because they don't consider anybody else's feelings. And the moment a narcissist realizes that they cannot control you, they become nasty, they become ugly, they become abusive. They will tear you apart verbally in front of other people. Some may even go as far as physical abuse if they can get away with it. But it is really all about asserting their power and their control over you. So they may engage in power struggles, and they will belittle or intimidate those around them, particularly those people that they feel are a threat. So generally, when you work with narcissists, whether they're bosses or colleagues, some even subordinates, they generally, with the bosses and colleagues, is they will belittle and intimidate you to try and get you to do what they want. You've got to appease their anger, and so that they don't get angry, you just give them what they want all the time. And when they realize that you are not reacting emotionally, because they need, for them to see that they have power and control, you need to react emotionally to whatever they're doing. When they see that you're not reacting emotionally, you're not giving in, you're not giving them what they want, they'll try and continue to belittle and bully and intimidate you. But if you show that you're unmoved, you can't be bothered, you see right through them, eventually they leave you alone. But what they'll then do is they'll go around speaking ill of you to people, so that they turn people against you. They want a situation where you no longer have a good relationship with anyone, particularly in the workplace. They'll speak ill of you to superiors, to colleagues, to stakeholders. Eventually, people around you start giving you all kinds of weird attitude, and you wonder why. But it's because the narcissist has spoken ill of you. And it's only when people see you at work after a long time that they realize that this person's been lying to them, manipulating them, using them against you. And but then obviously by then, sometimes things are too late. You've either chosen to move on, leave the job, or they've left the job because they realize that they've been found out. But those are some of the tactics that they use. So they will, exploit other people, and they will try and gain power over people, and they will switch tactics to make sure that they get what they want, which is ultimately power and control. Because they need the power and control so that at all times you're doing the things that they want, you're helping them further their career. They're not going to help you. They're not helping you. They'll pretend they're helping you. They'll say things like, I really want to help. But the moment a narcissist says, whatever a narcissist says, assume the opposite. If they say, I really want to help you, what they mean is, I really want to help me. I don't want to help you. I want to do what's good for me. But right now, it suits me to lie to you and pretend I'm helping because I'm trying to exploit you and persuade you to do things my way, the way that I want, because it suits me and it's what I need at this point. So they will switch tactics. Narcissists are also emotionally volatile. They can have unpredictable and intense mood swings, leading to outbursts of anger, aggression, or even violence. That is a classic sign of demonic influence or demonic possession. So the outbursts of anger that are uncontrollable are part of the tactics to cow you, bully you, intimidate you so that you do what they want. But that is number one sign that you're dealing with a narcissist, because it's unpredictable, it's uncalled for, it's a disproportionate reaction to whatever has happened. They fly into a rage, and that is a classic symptom of demonic possession. So if you're somebody who is empathic, intuitive, able to discern spirits, the anger will tell you that this is not righteous anger, which is normal when someone's feelings have been hurt, their boundaries have been disregarded. This is someone just using anger to try and control you. I've spoken about lack of accountability. So malignant narcissists rarely take responsibility for their actions and may blame others or external circumstances for their mistakes. And they have shallow relationships. So they may have shallow relationships, using people for their own benefit and discarding them when they're no longer useful. And I think here it's important for us to talk about the narcissistic abuse cycle. So the narcissistic abuse cycle, and this applies to obviously somebody who's been diagnosed with narcissism, because it is actually a mental condition. And when you speak to psychologists and psychiatrists, they'll say, no, you can't go around saying that this person's a narcissist because they haven't been diagnosed. But the truth of the matter is, a narcissist is unlikely to go and check themselves into a facility or speak to a psychologist and do an assessment and accept the results of an assessment that says you have narcissistic personality disorder or you have narcissistic personality traits. They're the last person that's going to go and get help because they're perfect, right? They can do no wrong. So the narcissistic abuse cycle starts with what we call idealization or love bombing. The moment you meet them, you're the best thing since sliced bread. They've never met anyone like you. If you're at work, you're brilliant, you're amazing, you're competent. That's because they've seen something that can help them. So they will play up your strengths, make you feel good, make you feel that you are part of the inner circle, you are trusted, you're amazing. That's the idealization stage. It doesn't last very long because a narcissist or a person with narcissistic personality traits doesn't have the energy to continue, because that idealization is not coming from a genuine place of affection or respect or regard. It's part of the mask, it's part of the facade, it's part of the act to suck you deeper and deeper into their world, create a bond with you, so that after that they can use and abuse you as they see fit. So narcissists are very clever with this. So after the idealization stage comes what is known as the devaluation stage. At this point, they are just criticizing you. Everything is wrong with you. Your weight, the way you chew, the fact that you drink too much soda. Okay, I'm being really facetious here and I'm using different examples, way out examples. But everything they can find that is wrong with you, they will make sure they say it, and they say it out loud, and if possible, say it in front of an audience, because it's part of the process of breaking you down. And they need to break you down emotionally so that you become dependent on them. You start to crave their approval. So they give a little bit of approval, and then they give you heaps of disapproval. Little bit of approval, heaps of disapproval. And that seesaw back and forth emotionally, where one minute you're the best and the next minute you're the worst thing that ever happened. It's like being in an abusive marriage where your husband beats you up and then buys you flowers afterwards. You tolerate the beatings because you know that at some point he's going to come back, pretend. I personally think it's pretend to feel guilty, buy you flowers, take you out for dinner, get you a gift, but he's hurt you. He's injured you, not just physically, but he's also injured you emotionally. And he does it deliberately so that you keep trying to please him. Today, he hits you for burning the soup. He apologizes, he buys you flowers. You're going to then make damn sure you don't burn the soup again, right? Tomorrow, he's going to beat you up for not cleaning the house. You're going to make sure that the house is spotless. There's always something with a narcissist. There's always something else with an abuser. What you've done to fix your mistakes in the past, it's never enough. There's always something else. That's part of the abuse cycle. So it can just continue as verbal violence, emotional abuse, or financial abuse, but it can potentially, in a close partner relationship, intimate partner relationship, escalate into physical violence. But because they're so charming outside and they're so charming to everyone else outside, even if you tell people that this man beats you up behind closed doors, doesn't give you money, doesn't show appreciation, everyone is going to look at you funny. They're not going to believe you. The same thing happens at work with the narcissist. When they are now in that devaluation cycle, it's there to break down your spirit. And it's there to break you emotionally. It's also there to give the impression to people outside that you're incompetent. So that even if you complain, people will say, but why are you complaining? We know that you're incompetent, right? So that is how they break you down. That's the devaluation stage. So the devaluation stage is part of what is known as forming a trauma bond. And the trauma bond, like the abused wife, is what keeps you trying hard to please them. It's what allows them to then use you at a later stage to cover up their mistakes. So a bully will use you to hide their mistakes. And one of the reasons for that is often narcissists and or workplace bullies have something to hide. If they're not incompetent, they may have been involved in perpetrating fraud or embezzlement or doing something unethical, which can actually get them into trouble or get them fired. And it's usually something to the detriment of the company, because remember, they only care about themselves. They don't care about anyone else's interests. And whatever they do, if it's to the detriment of the company, they cannot afford to have a staff member questioning their actions or decisions. Because contrary to popular perception, victims of workplace bullies are highly intelligent, above average performers with high potential. And they often are very articulate and have a strong sense of fairness. And this is why they will pose a threat to a boss who has Machiavellian tendencies. I wrote about this in one of my posts on Twitter with the hashtag workplace bullying. So we are still talking about the narcissistic abuse cycle. So we've talked about the devaluation stage and the attempt to create a trauma bond. The final stage is the discard stage. This is where they completely ignore you. They ghost you. They don't respond to your emails. They don't respond to text messages. If sometimes in a meeting you will say something and they'll deliberately ignore you, or they will shut you down. That basically tells you that you're no longer in good standing or in the good books of the narcissist, and you're no longer of any use to them, and therefore they cannot be bothered to engage with you. 9 times out of 10, they have found another colleague or another subordinate or another group of subordinates on whom they are busy in the initial stages of the narcissistic abuse cycle. So they don't have energy to expend on you because you've outlived your usefulness. They now need to groom the new supply so that this new person now becomes part of the inner circle and gives them what they're looking for in terms of supply. At this point, they probably sucked you dry. You've got nothing left to give. You've been striving and really trying to please them and doing everything that they ask of you, but it's not enough because they always want more, and they are givers. They're not givers, sorry, they are takers. And what then happens with the narcissistic abuse cycle in the discard stage is one of two things. Either you leave the relationship or they leave the organization. But with a bully, things never really end. With a narcissist, things never really end. They somehow want to keep you in circulation, a little bit like how planes circle the city in preparation for landing, and they have to be cleared for landing if there's a storm or there's poor visibility. So they'll keep you in circulation, and when they feel that you are useful to them, they'll try and suck you back in to the cycle by love bombing you again, by idealizing you again, and pretending that, sometimes they'll act like nothing happened, or sometimes they will blame somebody else for, the break in the relationship with you. But either way, it's to persuade you to come back and give them again what they need. I experienced this with a line manager. I worked for this person for a total of 4 years. The first 6 months, things were great. The first few months, things were amazing. He was very attentive, excessively attentive, in fact. You'd be on the phone for an hour. Sometimes you'd say 20 or 30 minutes into the conversation, I really have to go. Then you'd say, oh, one more thing. Oh, and then another thing. And then another thing. And what this is the narcissist crossing your boundaries. So I didn't realize it at the time. I indulged him. He was very attentive. We would have long conversations about work when he needed ideas. So he's going to an exco meeting and he needs to say something, or you've come out of a meeting, he would then want to sound you out to say, what do you think of this? And I felt very flattered because, the boss cares about my opinion and he values what I have to say. And so I would give my opinion. Then we went into the devaluation, where he would generally not openly criticize me, because this time I was dealing with a covert narcissist. So covert narcissists tend to be passive aggressive and avoidant. They don't tackle you directly. What he would do is he'd give me the silent treatment. So if I said something in a meeting that made him unhappy, he wouldn't talk to me for 2 weeks. Even in the meeting with other people, he would act like I didn't exist, which was very disconcerting because you still have work to do. Then we got to a point where he stopped answering my emails, even when I raised valid concerns or issues. He stopped responding to text messages, stopped responding to WhatsApp, just went AWOL, ghosted me like I was some kind of ex-girlfriend that was bugging him, but was an employee. He only had a working relationship. That was really the crazy part. And this went on for 3 years. I was blessed in that particular position because I didn't really need him to get my work done. I could still get my work done because I also had signing mandates and authority to do certain things. So I didn't really need him. And he literally went on holiday because I did everything, his job and mine. But he disappeared. He didn't talk to me. The only time we spoke was at mid-year review and at year-end review. And if I wanted to get my point across, I'd have to do it in a meeting with other people, where then he couldn't be rude and totally ignore me like he'd been doing. But whenever I tried to set up time with him, he was unavailable. Sometimes he'd set up the one-on-one and then cancel it. That's just how we worked. This went on for 3 years until I found another role and I moved. And the funny thing is, when I then said, I'm leaving and I'm moving, he was so upset. He was upset. It was really strange why he was upset, because he discarded me, right? But he felt terrible because he wanted to be the one to break the relationship. And it wasn't supposed to be me walking away. It was meant to be him kicking me out. But he didn't have a reason to kick me out. So when I moved and I left, he was obviously very upset by that. But he had no choice but to accept me moving on. And, every now and again, he would try to initiate contact. It's a process known as hoovering. When you speak to people or listen to people who run narcissistic abuse recovery programs, the narcissist finds a way to keep you in their life so that when they need to, they can draw on you and they can pull you in. But otherwise, unless you've got something useful to offer them, there's no engagement. They only engage you when you have something useful, something to offer. And I've watched him play the same sick game with other employees, but what can you do? You can only warn people, but if they're not ready to accept that they're not dealing with a normal human being, it becomes really, really tricky. So the narcissistic abuse cycle is very much a feature of how narcissists behave. I have spoken previously about the pathological lies. So they lie compulsively, and they'll lie at the drop of a hat. And the lies are really just designed to either create a negative impression of you or to create a good impression of them. And they will lie for convenience. They're not going to actually have any kind of conscience. They will say whatever they have to do. So malignant narcissists often engage in deceit and may fabricate stories or facts to manipulate others. The other thing they do is they isolate their victims. I mentioned how they will take away any kind of support or relationship you have with other people, and it's designed to make you dependent on them. It's so that they have power over you. And it's very difficult to come back from such a situation, because by the time people realize the truth, often the relationship has broken down, you've moved on, or they've moved on. But we'll talk a little bit about the body jumping. So when you find you are experiencing exactly the same behaviors from different people, and I'm just going to refer to my post on workplace bullying just to give an idea of the kind of behaviors that narcissists and people with narcissistic personality disorders, the way they behave. So they often engage in intimidating behaviors like shouting at you, staring you down, ripping you to pieces, ripping you to shreds in front of, a crowd of people, really trying to embarrass you, make you look incompetent. They may blame you for things that you didn't do. Sometimes they will fabricate or create what we call trumped up charges and actually hold a whole disciplinary hearing. And this is part of the campaign against you so that you look incompetent and you then don't have any support either from leadership or stakeholders or from management. So just some of the behaviors that I mentioned that they will kiss up and kick down. And they're expert networkers and they're very careful in selecting their victims. So what they like to do is to pick favorites in the team and cause conflict and drama. And they do this to hide their agendas because naturally they're paranoid and they're distrustful. So you don't even trust even those that are in the inner circle. So they don't even trust some of the people in the inner circle. So they're Machiavellian in their tendencies. They keep their friends close and the enemies closer. The members of the inner circle are often their advocates and they know where the bodies are buried. So they create drama. They pit people against each other. They can pit colleagues against each other in the same team because now the colleagues have to compete for the boss's attention. They may pit stakeholders against each other, and it takes somebody who has self awareness and insight and discernment to understand that this conflict between Team X and Team Y is actually being manipulated by a third person who has an agenda. And so bullies' weapons of choice including yelling, that's usually for overt narcissists, swearing, physical intimidation such as standing up and staring you down, ignoring you, the silent treatment, spreading rumors, bad-mouthing you to superiors. I mentioned the disciplinary action for trumped up charges and bad performance reviews that have no evidence. And it's very difficult to catch them because often the boss, if there's the boss only often sees the charming and competent side of the bully. And when the behavior is brought to the boss's attention, they're likely to side with the narcissist, sometimes because the boss is a narcissist themselves, and other times because they've just allowed themselves to be manipulated. In some cases, the boss is aware of the bully's powerful network and doesn't want to get on the bad side of the bully or the narcissist, so they ignore the behavior and they become part of the problem because they become an enabler in the drama triangle and they don't take the necessary action to stop the bullying. So what normally happens is people leave the organization because the victim is usually destroyed emotionally as well as career-wise. And the bully must always have a victim. The narcissist always has victims because they always need that narcissistic supply. They always need a victim whom they can project their mental chaos and inability to manage things and manage themselves and shift blame. They always need somebody that they must blame and that they must project onto. So they don't stop. And when it comes to the body jumping, if you experience these behaviors repeatedly with different people in different organizations, sometimes it's not necessarily because you've not done your shadow work, you still have unhealed wounds. Sometimes it's because you are actually spiritually gifted, you have a spiritual calling, you have a mission that you need to fulfill in this world, and I posted about this recently. You have a mission you need to fulfill. So in the spirit, there is a hit out on you. If you've ever watched the movie John Wick, there's one of the parts where the people are sitting at a switchboard and they then broadcast that there is a hit on John Wick for so many millions. and suddenly every assassin in the world is flocking to this place, the city, to look for John Wick and kill him because there is a high there's a high amount of money um, to bring in his head to kill him. So when you're an empath and an intuitive, if you're spiritually gifted, if you do the work of helping people, you'll find that in the spirit world, there is a hit that's out on you. So literally every demon that doesn't have a mission, that doesn't have anything better to do, they're looking to either gain rank by taking you out because you actually matter. The things that you're doing make a difference in people's lives. So they really want to take you out. And what happens is a particular principality or demon may have been stalking you for a very long time. And because they're stalking you and trying to take you out, what they have to do is to jump bodies. And they will seek out people who have a low vibration in your circle: spouses, children, parents, bosses, colleagues, friends, co-workers, anybody that is low vibrational that is in your circle. They will influence that person, they will possess that person in more extreme cases, and the person will start to behave in the ways that you've experienced with other people. And this is in the hopes of oppressing you so that they push you over the edge. Either you lose your sanity, you become mentally or physically ill, or you become so depressed and anxious that you end up committing suicide. That way, they would have taken you off the path. And people who are demon possessed, there's a very focused on you because of your high vibration. Your light irritates their demons. And your light is where you keep doing those random acts of kindness. It defeats their efforts to bring down other people. So let's say you have somebody who is anxious and depressed. They come to you for advice. You give them good advice. They come out of that situation. The demon that was sent and assigned to that person gets angry. And they then communicate with other demons that are influencing and possessing people around you to say, we've got to take this person out because they're disrupting our mission of bringing down everybody else. So I recently had an encounter with a narcissist, and I had to inquire of my guides to say, what is going on? What is happening? Why is this happening again? And they showed me a scripture, which is Isaiah 35, verse 8. I'm going to just go to the scripture itself to read it to you because it talks about the past. So in the New International Version, it says, and a highway will be there. It will be called the way of holiness. It will be for those who walk on that way. The unclean will not journey on it. Wicked fools will not go about on it. I'm going to read a different translation, which is more like the amplified version. I was hoping in this one I could find the Message Bible, but let's just see if we can find the Message Bible because that has what I thought was a very good translation. Which we go, found it. The Message Bible, that's a different version. It says, "There will be a highway called the Holy Road. No one rude or rebellious is permitted on this road. It is for God's people exclusively. Impossible to get lost on this road. Not even fools can get lost on it. No lions on this road, no dangerous wild animals, nothing. And no one dangerous or threatening. Only the redeemed will walk on it. The people God has ransomed will come back on this road. They'll sing as they make their way home to Zion, unfading halos of joy encircling their heads, welcomed home with gifts of joy and gladness as all sorrows and sighs scurry into the night." So the path that we walk as gifted people is one that allows us to uplift others so that we can all walk on this path together and enter the kingdom of God and be in the promised land. And demons particularly do not like this. So their mission is always to make sure that they lower our vibration, we lose our hope and our trust in God, we abandon our belief in an almighty, all-powerful, all-consuming God, and we focus on the pain. We get lost in the pain and we forget about the Creator. And we are cut off and isolated from any source of healing or light whatsoever, and we continue to dwell in the darkness. So that is the demon's mission. So they will jump from one body to the other. When they realize that you've left this job and you've left this particular boss and you go to a new job, they'll look for somebody in that job, either your next line manager or his line manager or a workplace colleague or a stakeholder. The principality will literally jump bodies and inhabit that other person to continue the mission, to try and bring you down. So they're actually going to continue with the hits. So I'm going to do a part 2 where we talk about what can you do about it, because you have to protect yourself. You have to keep up with your regular spiritual practice. You have to pray and meditate. If you know how to talk to your ancestors and spirit guides, you have to speak to them. If you're experiencing extreme circumstances like a trumped up charge in terms of disciplinary action, or the drama is just getting too much and it's everywhere, you need to pray and fast and cleanse, because remember, each time you have that negative interaction and they project their negativity onto you, it clings to you, it clings to your aura, and it attracts more negativity. So it becomes very important for you to cleanse regularly, especially if you're gifted, especially if you have a calling, and make sure that you create emotional distance. And I'll talk about that in the next video in terms of what to do about it. I didn't want this video to be too long, but there are things that you can do so that you continue on your path. Because one thing what narcissists do is they repeatedly cross your boundaries. They want to take over your life. They want to completely control you. And by controlling you, that demon, using them, does things in such a way that you won't be able to continue with your spiritual practice. You won't be able to do your spiritual work. And that's how they aid and abet the other demons that are busy trying to take out other people whom you should be helping. So I hope you found this useful, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.